to Behind the Banter, the segment where we step away from the headlines, hot takes, and scoreboards to sit down with people who have unique stories, fascinating careers, and a passion worth sharing.
Today's guest is someone we actually met through our love for football. And after chatting with him, we quickly discovered there was another passion that was literally out of this world. Joining us from KAIKURA, New Zealand is Brad from Moana Skies, where he helps people experience the most incredible nighttime skies anywhere on Earth.
From world-class stargazing and the rich history of astronomy in KAIKURA to what makes New Zealand such a special place to explore the universe, Brad gives us his inside look at the night sky like you've probably never heard before.
And of course, we couldn't resist asking some big questions. Are we alone on this universe? What's the deal with UFO sightings? And if you spent thousands of nights looking into the stars, have you ever seen anything that just you couldn't explain?
So whether you're fascinated by astronomy, love New Zealand, or just enjoy a great conversation that takes some unexpected turns, this is one interview you won't want to miss. So sit back, look up, and enjoy our conversation with Brad from Moana Skies.
All right, Brad. Well, thank you very much for rejoining us on behalf of your stargazing company, Moana Skies, this time,
Yes.
which we talked about while we had you on with South Island United, and what a wonderful episode that was. So we've been super stoked and anticipating having you on. We've generated, a ton of questions for you today, really to go over, learn more about, Moana Skies, KAIKURA, stargazing, you name it, and everything that the area has to offer. So first things first, as it comes to Moana Skies, can you share a little bit about the mission of the company altogether?
Well, that's a great starting question. Firstly, obviously formalities. Thanks for having me back on, guys. I've been looking forward to it too. Any excuse to chat astronomy is a win for me.
Absolutely.
Like the mission of Moana Skies. Look, if you had to put it in an MO, I would say to create the most accessible, high quality astronomy experiences that you can get to the public. We're very, very passionate about obviously not only creating a very unique experience, but ensuring that it's not only at an accessible price, but also accessible in terms of knowledge. You don't need a degree in astrophysics to come and join us. And that's a big misconception about astronomy that we'll get into today, I'm sure. But I would say it's to create the most accessible and high quality experience possible, essentially.
Love that.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Was there an exact moment that you knew you wanted to turn, astronomy and stargazing into a business?
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously been an industry for quite a while, sort of taken off globally, I would say, probably in the last sort of 30, 35 years. So as much as I wish I could take the credit for coming up with stargazing, obviously it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. Myself and my partner, we decided to give it our own go personally, probably about just under 3 years ago now. About 3 years ago now, and I had been in the industry myself for coming up on about 8 years, and we just decided why don't we do it ourselves? A lot of stress, a lot of money, as I'm sure everyone's aware, and a lot of everything else, good and bad, that comes with starting a business later. And here we are. So things are going well. Yeah, we love it here.
Wonderful. I can see why. You've sent us, a ton of photos, exploring your page, your website altogether. It's absolutely fascinating. It looks incredible. And, I feel like that's kind of a good moment because the photos you take honestly look crystal clear, like some of the clearest outer space photos. It looks like you're in space. I don't know. Maybe you are at that point with those how high quality those photos are. It's ridiculous. And one thing that you brought up to us previously, and something that we find fascinating as well, is KAIKURA having the dark sky sanctuary altogether. And can you share exactly what that means? Because it's something that a lot of us, it's the first time hearing about a dark sky sanctuary. So maybe describe that and what it means to Kaikoura altogether.
Oh, cool. So a dark sky sanctuary is basically a classification for a dark sky area. So there are numerous of them. You get dark sky sanctuaries like we have in Kaikoura. You have dark sky reserves, which is one that we have down here in New Zealand in Tekapo, in Mount Cook. We have you have dark sky towns, dark sky communities, all sort of crossing different T's and dotting different I's, depending on things like population, the size of the area that you want to be a dark sky classification. But regarding the sanctuary here in Kaikoura, we have a pretty unique story in terms of sort of how it came about. And I actually came just after that sanctuary was approved. So there is an incredible team here. They are called the Kaikoura Dark Sky Trust, charitable organization. Once again, I recommend you guys go and check them out. The work they do is incredible, and they are the ones that are responsible for maintaining the sanctuary status. Now, a lot of sanctuaries across the world, we were actually the 22nd, so pretty exclusive group, with nearly in the latter stages of the World Cup if we were a nation playing football. So obviously a very, very small group. And most of those designations come about through science, education, tourism, all of these other different reasons. Of course, conservation is always center to this. We're a bit unique here because we have a bird that is known as a shearwater hutton. I'll send you guys some photos and some links of some of the stuff that happens here. But we have a pretty unique responsibility here in Kaikoura because this bird is evolution. I always joke it's a bit stunted in evolution, but we are the last breeding colony in the world. So if we didn't care about these birds, they wouldn't be here anymore. And sort of what makes them unique to the night sky is I've shown you guys some photos of the Alps here. They nest up in those mountains and they can't take off from land. So basically they have to take off from the mountain and fly down. They then land on the ocean, and that's where, of course, they do, a lot of their stuff in terms of feeding, etc. And they can then take off again from water, but they can't take off from land. So when we have artificial light in the town, when they're flying down from those Alps, they get very confused. And we have a season here that's a period every single year, which is the season where they're all coming down from the Alps. And us locals, we literally carry boxes in the back of our cars during this time of year because you will get hundreds of them smacking into windows, buildings, all of this type of stuff because of the light. And then we pick them up, we put them in the back of our cars, and we take them to these designated areas around town, which are run by the Hutton Shearwater Trust, another charitable conservation organization. And they basically they nurse these birds back to health if they need it, and then they go and release them out on the water. And they're these little, we joke, they're almost these little Hutton hotels because they're little cubby holes that you go and put these birds in. And then you let them know and they come and get them and send them back out. So that was the base of why we became a dark sky sanctuary here in Kaikoura, is to protect these birds. Of course, it then opens up all the other responsibilities that we have here in terms of night sky education and conservation. We have a massive marine life responsibility here. So sort of understanding how artificial life affects our marine life and education. And there's been a lot of work done by the trust to ensure that our night sky is protected in multiple ways. For example, our lights here, they are covered. So going out to sea, the light is blocked, and then they are also blocked going down. So basically our street lights uniquely just go straight down to the ground with quite low luminosity. So they're not polluting, firstly, the sky above, but the ocean and everything else around it. So we are a very conservation-driven town here. And then, of course, the astrotourism side of things is where we get to educate people on not only the night sky, but sort of the good work that's being done for these animals. But very long-winded answer. But the sanctuary it's quite complex, but the heart of it is just protecting our precious resource, which is obviously the night sky.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Make you mayor, honestly. Sorry. This is unbelievable. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, Brad, because I read into it a little bit because like I said, reading a little bit about Moana Skies, your website, I started seeing the dark skies and going into it, and it, like Tim mentioned with the question, it's like it's something we've never heard of here, at least in the States probably. There might I don't know if there are dark sky
You
sanctuaries
guys are actually
in,
one of the leaders.
are we?
Ayo.
Okay, good. But like I say, I think
It's nice.
when you live in a big city or like, some places where it's probably harder, we don't hear about it. And one of the things I was reading is like light pollution. And can you share a little bit of like why it's important to really and maybe for cities to start looking at light pollution and how that's affecting our skies and even just preserving the dark skies?
Yeah. Big cities are obviously not a place to be for dark skies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously there's a lot of reasons why it's important to conserve the night sky and not overlight pollute. Like, kind of depends, which angle you want to take. If you want to take the feel good reason, which hits quite close home, quite close to home for me, is I have a 6-year-old son. And sort of the way that we are continuing to go in 50, 80, potentially even less than that in terms of years, we're looking at not having a night sky. We're looking at stars and being able to see planets as a myth. And that might sound ridiculous, but all you have to do is talk to someone who grew up in an area that has now become industrialized, and the sky that they look at when they were growing up isn't the same. So, being able to kind of pass on these stars and the stories behind them and sort of the wonder of what you're looking at, which once again
Hmm.
we'll go into,
Yeah.
that's going to be lost. And imagine kind of telling your kids about these mythical white lights in the sky, and they think, all right, granddad, okay, and you're trying to explain to them,
Yeah.
no, they were real things. So you can of course lose them and lose that sort of wonder. But then of
Hmm.
course you have sort of the nature aspect, the fact that all of these animals, including us, evolved to not have unnatural white light. So we are directly harming all of these animals. A really silly example is you only have to read numbers of how many rabbits or deer or things like that are hit due to headlights. And that's a really silly example, but that's one of them. The birds here crashing into buildings. You have all of these issues of animals that also navigate via the stars, all of these animals that are not going to be able to adjust. It's that simple. They're
Yeah.
not just going to sort of, they'll be okay, they'll struggle a bit, but they'll be fine. By creating light that is just a little bit lighter for no reason other than, hey, let's make it brighter, we are directly causing the extinction of some animals. So, we're not turning around and saying, hey, get rid of all your lights, or, do this and do that. And we're not trying to make it difficult. There's really, really simple things you can do. We'll talk about them, but, a really silly example is having your lights on a low sensor. So, does your sensor light need to be on for 30 seconds, or does it need to be on for 5 to 10?
Hmm.
I don't think anyone needs a sensor light on for 30 seconds, but yeah, just little examples like that.
I really appreciate that because it's something I think about probably a little bit more now. I just moved from more of a city place. I lived in geographically Port Hueneme, so near the beach, but now I live in Ojai, a very small town, between two mountains. And the one thing I've noticed, because there is a lot less light in this small town compared to where I was, I look up, I can see so many more stars than what I did where I used to live. And even like where I grew up, like I could never see the stars that way. I took astronomy class in college, and it was hard to see the stars. And I could only imagine being here in Ojai and seeing it. I enjoy just going outside and looking up at the stars now because I could actually see them.
Yeah. And sort of on what you're saying, you know, that's one of the very brilliant but very small aspects of it,
Mhm.
because then you get all the trickle down effect. I'm sure. Do you guys have kids out of interest?
Mhm.
Yes. I have two.
Yeah.
John has
So
one. Yep.
Mhm.
Ah, best. So I'm sure, like you guys, you want to experience and share that sky with your children and explain to them sort of the ridiculous things that they're looking at in the sky. And obviously, if it's not there in person, so you can't go out and look at it, no one's going to be interested in it.
Mhm.
Talking about, hey, this is what it looks like if we didn't have all this,
Yeah.
it kind of takes a lot of it away. So
Yeah.
it's all about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's you beat me to it, John. I was going to bring
Mhm.
up the aspect of, how great you could probably see the stars from Ohio area because
Yeah.
I'm in kind of the heartbeat of Los Angeles, Brad. I'm here in Hollywood, and it's just flooded. I mean, the Hollywood sign is just illuminating absolutely everything at this point. But cool place to live, but at the same time, you don't really, you're not one with nature necessarily. You're one with the nature of a crazy city. So oftentimes my parents live in the state of Arizona, so you travel through nothing but desert to get there, and on the way there's been moments where kiddo has to go to the restroom, whatever, you have to get gas in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And a lot of times we'll travel at nighttime because it's much easier with kiddos. They'll fall asleep, and you can just kind of have the peace and quiet of driving. So but when we've done that, one thing I absolutely love to do is when we're out in the desert, the light pollution is so much less out there, and it's kind of like the photos you're sending. Like it looks like there's not a light for miles upon miles, and you can just explore and kind of look up, and it's rare, for people that live in those major hub cities. So it's definitely something I've learned to appreciate much more, having those moments. And John just made me jealous. You're making me jealous because I have to drive a little bit to find it. But it's great overall, and it's a beautiful thing. It's absolutely fascinating. And one thing, speaking of kiddos, I have a soon-to-be 9-year-old son, and he is absolutely enamored with all things space. It's like literally an hour ago, 2 hours ago, I had a conversation. He has like an app on his tablet where he can change the sizes of planets. He can make them morph together. He can make his own planet. Don't know the name of it. Fantastic app though, because he loves it. And he'll answer a ton of questions for me. Anything I have, like, it's fascinating how much he's grasped to the concept of, all things astronomy. So one thing that we really noticed about Moana Skies, your website, is that you have a young astronomers program. And, we definitely want to hear about how important, it is to inspire the next generation. I know you said with light pollution, things like that, stars might become a myth after a while. So I'm sure that this is a big help towards that, but would love to hear more about that program.
Yeah. Just touching on what you were saying, by the way, if you guys are
Uh-huh.
interested, sort of Colorado, Arizona, literally one of the best places to stargaze in the world.
Okay.
Um, and as I said, US does have the most. You guys have got about 150 dark sky locations. So your
Okay.
little towns
Heyo.
in the desert, in out of cities, are actually really good at it. It's kind of a double-edged sword over there. It's almost like the guilt is making you guys do more dark sky areas.
Yeah.
Of the big cities. You're like, hey, we've got all these big cities. Let's make a
Yeah.
couple of dark sky
Yeah.
areas to offset it. Yeah.
That's
But hey,
fantastic. Pumping my car, I'm like
uh,
reaching out, like looking over the roof of the gas station at the sky. Yeah.
hey,
I'm not crazy, I promise.
so
I'm just looking.
yeah, they're up there. They're up there. You
Absolutely.
should be surprised. Hey, look. So our young astronomers program was something that my partner herself was very passionate about. Obviously, I always joke I'm a glorified telescope. My partner Olivia, she is the bread and butter, the brains of the business, and thankfully she's not here because she wouldn't agree, but she is, and she knows she is. But
Wow.
there's something very important, and she reminded me of it. Is I grew up not being exposed to STEM. If you guys don't know what STEM is, I'm sure you do. Obviously, science, technology, education, mathematics. That decade on decade, the engagement in that gets less and less and less. Of course, without going too deep into it, that then in turns makes for less advancement, less development, less, sounds silly, but curious kids. And what we wanted to do was sort of realize that I didn't actually get into this until I was probably 18. And don't get me wrong, I loved astronomy as a kid, but I loved planets and I loved
Ooh.
aliens and I loved the moon. I didn't love the astronomy, right? And as I got older, I started to get exposed to it and I realized, hey, you always think of, the best evers, the Stephen Hawkings, the Galileos, the genius people that we can't comprehend being like. So you sort of go, I'm not going to touch that topic, just like I'm not a surgeon, so I'm not going to look at surgery, right? Astronomy is different because it's something every single person can engage with. So we realized children, unless they have quite wealthy families or they go to quite wealthy schools that expose them to this, they don't have access to astronomy. Of course, they can look at YouTube and they can look at movies, but how many of them have looked through a telescope, for example? How many of them can name all the planets in order from the sun out to the edge of the solar system? How many people can how many kids can tell us how old the universe is? And these are probably all questions that you guys are even sitting there going, "Ooh, I have to think about that
I'm
twice."
stumped. Yeah.
Yeah. And what we realized is, in my opinion, this information is fundamental to existence,
Mhm.
right? So I think everyone should know this. I think this should be a fundamentally taught and, almost mandated education. So we sort of went, hey, there's nothing out there. Let's approach these schools and let's get in there every fortnight. So this was something that we did last year. And every fortnight, we would go in the schools and we would split them up into groups based, of course, on their ages. And we did sort of base astronomy. So we taught them about the Earth. We taught them about the solar system. We taught them about lights. We taught them about the sun. We didn't go into crazy complex physics or quasar stars or things that are
Mhm.
just, are amazing, but you don't need to start with that. That's where astronomy goes wrong a lot of the times. We started a lot of these kids with Legos and games and
Mhm.
digging up minerals from planets. And what we started to realize, and it kind of touched on what you were saying with your son, mate, is we realized the interest and the engagement was incredible. And we had parents reaching out to us going, my son hasn't stopped talking about this for the last 2 days. Where can we buy Lego? Where can we get resources? How do we get our kids into this? And, people think that my answer is going to be here, buy this $3,000, $4,000 telescope. It isn't. Right. There's lots of ways you can kind of stoke that fire within kids. And that's sort of what we aim to do. We aim to be a resource for these kids. So every kid leaving high school in KAIKURA can say, yeah, I've looked at the sun through a solar telescope. Yes, I can name all the planets. Yes, I've looked through a normal telescope on one of our community nights and all of these different things. And whether they want to progress that on further, and progress into STEM as a career is one thing. Whether they just want to be able to then share that with their kids and share that with
Mhm.
their friends and their communities in the future. So it's kind of just, trying to continue on the good work that is done all over the country and world, and just sort of, plant that seed sort of for 50 years' time, 100 years' time. That's kind of the goal, really.
Yeah, no, it's awesome because I think about it with my kiddo. Like my kiddo's just 3, so still learning a lot, but it's something I've always been into, planets, and almost like you. I was always into the planets, alien talk, the moon, the sun, never really into the stars, but as I got older, I really had much more of an appreciation. Taking an astronomy class helped me really learn a little bit about it more. So yeah, and like I say, I will say I lost touch with it a little bit when I moved to a city where, where you look up and it's like, oh, you can't see anything. It's like, all right, well, let me just go do whatever I was doing. Whereas now I look up and I could stay looking up for a while trying to find the constellation. So I think that's awesome. And it's something, living here now is something I want to continue with my kids. So finding programs like that, hopefully here in Ojai, or even at their schools, because I think there are like 2 STEM schools here in the city. So trying to focus on that, but trying to get into the stars more. What's because I know everywhere you can see certain galaxies, certain stars, constellations. What's the main attraction that visitors that go to Kaikoura and with you at Moana Skies that you may not be able to see in other places or even from major cities there in New Zealand?
Yeah, good question. it's sort of what we're talking about. It's that dark sky experience because look, you can, even in California, you can go, excuse me, even in California, you guys can go to observatories and you guys can look through telescopes and you can look at
Hmm.
the stars. So that is not something that is unique here. What is unique here is what you guys are seeing in those photos. Those are not heavily processed. Those are not heavily edited. Those are what you're seeing with your eyes. So you sort of all you have to do is talk to people that have seen our skies here,
Hmm.
and it's without going into the woo of things because we
Yeah.
don't do that here. It's awe-inspiring. You are stood beneath something that is life genuinely life-changing, and you
Hmm.
you get a perspective of I am stood on a little rock floating in the middle of the cosmos,
Hmm.
and not a feeling of insignificance, but a feeling of sort of wonder. And just, I always joke, one of the first things I say on a tour is, if during this tour you guys start having an existential crisis and feel like not going back to work on Monday, it means I'm doing my job correctly, right? Because
Nice.
that's what it creates. It creates that I didn't know that was up there, and that's above you, Tim. That's above you, John.
Mhm.
That's above both of you. Whether or not the lights or the clouds or anything else get in the way is a different story. So it's generally just that incredible night sky that people come here for. Just that once in a moment. Whoa.
Yeah, no, that sounds absolutely incredible. And I can only imagine the reactions of some folks. Like, let's say you get somebody from overseas, somebody from like, a heavily light polluted area, major city around the world, and you have visitors that come there and maybe are witnessing something for the very first time. It's something that they never imagined, and it can be a very eye-opening experience. Has there been like an example maybe of somebody that had just like this emotion come over them and, were brought to tears or just ultra excitement that they have never felt?
Yeah, so tears is a pretty common one. Without giving people's personal stories away
Yeah.
too much,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
what we do get quite a lot of is people that come along and they potentially shared that night sky with their mum or their grandparent, and they live in a city where they haven't been able to see it since, or
Mm.
for example, they're too tied up in work and they end up coming out with us and sort of sounds silly, but almost reverting back to I remember sitting on my deck across the world looking at this same part of the sky, because there is a part of our sky that is similar to yours. It's just upside down. So, we get, for example, a funny one that I had recently, not as emotional, but kind of someone just freaking out a little bit, was someone from Florida, Cape Canaveral.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
sure. Nice.
we had a Starlink train come up through a tour. Interestingly, you can actually go on our Instagram and see that night, on I think it's our fourth or fifth one. You'll see the Starlink trains coming up on the side of the photo. And we had someone go, "What are those?" We always have a moment of it's happening, we're being invaded. And then we realized, oh, they're Starlink trains. And what ended up happening was, going through the process of explaining to them, hey, yep, they were launched in Florida and they were launched probably about, 30, 40 hours ago, based on how far apart they are. And watching that person go, I was in Florida 40 hours ago and now I'm here, the other side of the world, looking at them, and you just watch them kind of go, it's that type of
That's
moment that we
awesome.
love. We love here.
That's crazy to think about. I over here on the West Coast, I don't know if we get Starlink launches
Yeah.
or SpaceX.
Yeah, I think it's SpaceX.
Yeah.
SpaceX. We
You get
get yeah,
SpaceX over there.
we get the other cool one. So so I myself
SpaceX is Starlink, by the way, Elon.
Yeah.
Sorry.
it's all Elon, just all him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've at least personally, and I think my wife has too, has become much more familiar with what it looks like after it gets launched, because typically, a lot of people who are kind of up to date and kind of follow that sort of thing understand when those launches will be. They like to stand by, witness it. It would be something, I'd love to do one day. But typically, we're not as well informed, so we'll be like driving from the store, and I mentioned it last time you were on, Brad, and with Ryan, and I was like, yeah, I literally think I saw something get launched up there, with Starlink or, whatever it is. And it's absolutely incredible watching them in like the daytime sky get launched through the clouds that they kind of form around, the rocket itself. It starts off looking like just like a jet plane, and then it just keeps going, and the speed it travels is just absolutely fascinating. And there was one occasion where I was driving back from Arizona to California. I was by myself. My wife and kiddos were already over here. And it was my very first time witnessing one of them. And just staring at it, I'm like, I had the same exact reaction. This is it. Called my wife, and I'm like, are you guys seeing this? And they're like, yeah, we see it too. And they're probably like 200 miles in front of me still. And I'm like, yeah, we're screwed right now. So I've had that same reaction. I totally understand what they're going through.
So if it makes you feel better, I have done this, as I said, for coming up on a decade, and every single month or so, there's something in the sky where I just go, that goes against everything I know. And then you go through like, what is it not? And then you end up like, okay. Prime example, I'll give you this one, and I'll send you a photo of this. So we had what was a very dramatic shooting star, and we'll go into shooting stars in a bit if you guys want to ask me about it. But I was on a tour packing up at the end, and it burst up the sky for a good sort of 5 seconds, which is quite unheard of for a shooting star if you guys have seen one. And anyway, I kept saying that's not a shooting star, and everyone was, it's a shooting star. It's not a shooting star. And what it ended up being was a piece of space debris from a Chinese rocket that was launched a week ago. So there's a lot of that in space. And once again, a big issue in space is debris, and we can go into this if you guys ask. But there's a pretty common theme of sort of, you see things and you go, that's not a satellite, that's not the space station, that's not a shooting. And then you just kind of go, what's happening? And you end up finding out a week later. It's always not as dramatic, but you always have a few days of, I saw them invading.
Oh yeah, that'd be my reaction.
Yeah. I think that's how I reacted. The first time I saw one of the SpaceX launches, I looked up and I was like, are you guys seeing, like, in my head I was like, people are actually seeing this or just driving? I'm like, I wanted to stop, but then I was like, oh, it's SpaceX. It wasn't anything. Because I literally thought we were getting invaded for a bit. Because I think we were just talking, we had an episode with another buddy talking to aliens, and it just happened like 2 days later, and I was like, oh, they heard us. They're coming to get us, they're targeting us, but
they're just coming to watch the World Cup.
Yeah, it might have just been that. But one question I have, Brad, because since we became like big New Zealand fans, and we really are gonna go try to find some time to go visit, and learning a lot about the Maori presence, in there, and where you're at, where you guys are located. There's a strong spiritual and cultural connections I've read. Can you share like a small taste of what storytelling could be that you sort of include that culture to the stars?
Yeah, and you are right on the money. It is a very important thing here. And look, I'll give you don't worry, this isn't a correction. This is just how to say it.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one. The way it's spelled, you almost want to say sort of Maori, so Maori, but you say it like moldy, like a moldy piece of bread.
Oh, okay. So Maori.
Like there's mold. Yeah, so you say moldy.
Maori.
Wish you would have told us that about 2 weeks ago.
That's
Brad.
it. No, that's it. Honestly, no one cares about it. Like, but it's the correct way to say it. So it's I think it's important.
Maori.
I'm English, as you can hear, but why not? But so in terms of the storytelling, look, it holds an incredibly important place here in New Zealand, stargazing, astronomy, for sort of a number of reasons. The main one is sort of the cultural and historical significance that the stars have. For example, we Polynesians obviously previously were arguably the best navigators in human history, using purely the stars for their time. They used to, of course, go right across the Pacific. They used to be incredible in terms of navigating using the stars. So they were always stories told about them. And sort of one thing that I love getting to share here is you always notice, right, there are crossovers in stories because these stars, they don't change. Obviously, they do over millions and millions of years. They haven't changed in the, 300 odd thousand years that we've been kind of kicking around doing our thing, right?
Yeah.
So we are looking at the stars we're looking at the same stars as the first people that were here. And you end up finding these crossovers in stories. So have you guys, for example, heard of Scorpius, the constellation? Have you ever heard of that? It's one of the zodiacs.
I can't say I have.
Negative, Brad. Sorry.
You guys are going to look this up. I'm gonna send you guys a link of an app that you're going to use
Homework.
to find it. Because basically, what it is it's a constellation, obviously a picture of stars, and it's a giant scorpion in the sky.
Okay.
And the tail goes round in a hook like this. I might be able to send you a picture of Scorpius that you can put up, but the tail goes round in a hook. So that constellation is one of the most famous across the world, as in the northern hemisphere. You come down here into the southern hemisphere, and the tail of that scorpion is known as Maui's hook. If you guys have ever seen Moana, if your kids like Moana, that's Maui. The thing that he's carrying is his hook. And in New Zealand mythology, that hook hooked up the North Island. So that's an awesome story that, you kind of understand that all of these years ago when they were looking up at these stars and they didn't understand that these were suns, millions and millions and millions of kilometers away, you can kind of see why their imagination started to run wild and they made stories and came up with legends. And it's very prevalent here in our culture. You guys called me on a perfect day for this question because you guys, more homework. Do you know what today is in New Zealand?
Ooh.
Google. One of you Google what holiday is today in New Zealand.
It's today.
Who can type faster? Not me.
Today is
Matariki public holiday.
That's the one. Matariki. So Matariki, more commonly known in your part of the world, is Pleiades, which is the Seven Sisters or Subaru. The car, those stars are on that logo.
I got that
here in there you go. Here in New Zealand, it is known as Matariki. And we actually have a public holiday here. I'm not sure what they're called in the US because they're called bank holidays in England. Like a day off from work.
Yeah, like a paid holiday or just a holiday.
Yeah, public holiday. Yeah. So we have that today on a Friday. So we have a long weekend. And that is in celebration of the Māori New Year, which literally comes from a constellation of stars. So
that's cool.
It is one and the same, the stars and our culture here in New Zealand. It's a beautiful thing to kind of get to experience when you do what I do, obviously.
No, that's fantastic. And thank you so much for plugging in Moana there, because me and John are in a box office competition for on the main podcast of movies coming out this summer. And Moana was one of my choices. So I hope it has a great opening weekend coming up here because it's a great movie. Everybody should go watch it. And Brad just did a phenomenal job.
Is the winner. Doomsday is the winner of whatever competition you guys have going on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. I know that's going to be a phenomenal movie too. I wish we included that one. We didn't. We did Odyssey, and Spider-Man's going to be the next upcoming one.
Spider-Man will be huge.
Unreal. I don't like that, Brad. Should have gone Odyssey. Just kidding.
No, see, and without going too off topic here, I'm a biggest Christopher Nolan fanboy because Interstellar is my favorite movie.
Nice.
I'm concerned with what they're doing with Odyssey in terms of decision making, and I feel like people that can't separate politics and art are going to protest that movie and be silly, which I think is going to affect the box office. But it's going to be a great movie. It's going to be an incredible movie. Christopher Nolan's a genius.
Yeah.
Off topic.
Should have thought about that one. So, next question, because you already brought it up here, Brad. And shooting stars, they're fascinating. you know, obviously there's a million different things you could probably decipher between, like you said, you know, it could be space debris, an actual shooting star, is it a comet passing by, you know, could be anything. It's a large outer space. Anything could be going by. So I want to hear a little bit about that, and you know, maybe the coolest experience you've had witnessing one of the shooting stars or something like that, and then maybe finalize it with is it true that you should wish when you see one?
Excuse me. Good question. By the way, I'm veering on a million topics. Before I answer that,
Yeah.
John, just for you, I was just
Mhm.
looking up. I was just looking up Ohio, like young astronomer
Oh,
programs.
hi.
I've
Oh,
just been
hi.
multitasking.
Yeah.
There's one for 10 to 17 year olds. So I'll send you the
Okay.
link to it
Okay.
for your little one. But
Nice.
anyways,
Thanks.
in terms of shooting stars, right? So I think the boss is just about to walk past, so she can say a quick hello. Come say hi. Say hi. Hi. She is the
Hi.
face and the better half of the business. So look, the main classification that you want to break down first is the things that come from space, right? So I'm going to give you guys a trick that you're probably going to use for the rest of your lives, and I want you to show this to your kids, right? Because this
Mhm.
worked for me, it works for my son when he was
Mhm.
about 5. So you have a shooting star, right? You'll hear all these words. You'll hear shooting star, comet, meteorite.
Mhm.
You'll hear meteor, you'll hear asteroid, right? You hear all of these things depending on the movie or who's
Mhm.
saying it. They're actually different things. So, first thing I want you to do is a shooting star is a different name for a meteor. So, the actual objects that you have is a shooting star. Sorry, the actual objects you have is a meteor,
Mhm.
a meteorite, a comet, and an asteroid. And I'll explain what those four are, right? So a meteor and a meteorite are pretty much the same thing. They are a piece of space rock that hits the atmosphere of the Earth
Mhm.
incredibly fast. Sort of for your context, I believe it's sort of going in the 17, 18,000 miles. So very, very, very quick. And it smacks into the atmosphere and essentially explodes. That's what you're looking at, right? The only difference between a meteor and a meteorite, and listen to this trick, is a meteorite has the right stuff to get to the ground. So the
Oh.
difference between a meteor and a meteorite is its mass, right? A
Okay.
meteor is between the size of a grain of sand up to sort of around a softball.
Okay.
If it's any bigger than that, it's not going to burn up on the atmosphere. It's going to go through the atmosphere and then it's going to be a rock that you see on the ground. So sometimes I've seen in news people holding a meteorite that they
Mhm.
found, and it's on the news and it's dead. Joe Blogs found a meteor. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's interesting considering meteors burn up on the atmosphere. So
Yeah.
he's found a meteorite.
Okay.
So all that is a little rock. And the difference is right stuff to get to the ground.
Mhm.
So teach your kids that right and it'll stick forever. Then you've got a comet, right? A comet is what you see in movies. A
Mhm.
comet is the arch nemesis of the dinosaurs. Those are the kilometer long city side. We call them, planet killers, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what those are. And an asteroid is sort of whatever context people want to use it in. Some people call little rocks asteroids, some people call comets asteroids. I generally keep it to the big one. So an asteroid is an incredibly large piece of space rock out there. And then, of course,
Mhm.
you just have space debris, which is man made objects,
Yeah.
satellites, rockets, thrusters, all of that type of stuff. And the big problem we have at the moment is there's tens of thousands of satellites, and not necessarily plans of how to get them all down or making pathways up. So if we're not careful, we're going to kind of lock ourselves in with all our Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Just ask Ryan. Just kidding. Yep. It happens.
Uh,
Awesome.
No, it's a great answer because I honestly, I would have said the other way around. I would have said meteorite, grain of sand,
yeah.
meteor,
Sounds
massive,
sounds bigger.
just massive. So yeah, you
Very common.
you corrected a 34-year-old mistake. So thank you very much.
No, but the one thing with that, Brad, we don't see many meteor or meteorites, things like that here in California. It's rare for us to see it. Is it a lot more common to see it there? Um,
Oh, yeah, once again, good question. Short answer, no. And I'm going to tell you how you guys can see them at home, as well as satellites and things like that, right?
mhm.
Because satellites are a big one that people want to see.
Yeah.
Um, Shooting stars are, you sound silly, you have to be lucky seeing a meteor or a meteorite because you have to be looking at the exact part of the sky, and it's generally less than a second.
Hmm.
So, no, we don't get more here. It's a bit different because we're looking at the sky more and we
Hmm.
have darker skies and all of these things. So, excuse me. So you guys obviously are having the same amount. You're just seeing a lot less of them.
Hmm.
Keep an eye out for the meteorite showers, the meteor showers.
Hmm.
Now, once again, they're a common misconception. People will go out, as a kid to look at a meteor shower that their mums told them about, and they're expecting like pew, 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 pew,
Yeah.
pew. It doesn't work like that. It's potentially sort of, you know, a few more an hour, or the bigger ones are a few more hundred an
Hmm.
hour. You don't always see them, and things like that. So you're much more likely to go out and see them sort of during those showers. But
Okay.
no, the advice is dark skies and spend a lot of time looking at the sky, and you'll see them. You'll see multiple a night.
That's incredible. I have a pretty big two-part question here for you, Brad. And if you don't mind, you can do it game show style because I'm sure they're pretty heavy. The two telescopes you have behind yourself, I would love to hear a little bit more about them. And then, what's the coolest thing you've seen through them?
Oh, okay. Like the coolest objectively, or my favorite?
Your favorite's fine.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay. So these are just here because, as you guys are aware, we'll talk about this at the end, but the flooding that's obviously
Hmm.
Yes.
been crazy here. So we had to empty our astronomy center just to be safe. So we've got a couple of them here. Um, we have about 14 telescopes here. I've
Wow.
got somewhat of an addiction. Almost as many football shirts as I have. Those two are like neck and neck. And my partner, both business partner and life partner, both hate me for them, but hey, they get the job done. This is our workhorse. So this is a 9.5 Celestron Schmidt Cassegrain. So look, if you guys are ever looking at buying a telescope, firstly, I wouldn't start with that. I'll tell you guys at the end how to get into it, but this is a very good telescope. Now, what this does and what makes this kind of um, worth its weight in gold for us is it self tracks, which means at the start of the night, we tell it, this is this star, this is this star, this is this star. And because of prior mapping and coding within it, it then tracks objects for the whole night.
Okay.
So I will point it up at Saturn, or I will point it up at, the jewel box or anything we want to look at, and it will track that throughout the evening. Obviously, as the planet moves, that sky, shifts around the
Hmm.
sky. We've got some cool videos on our Instagram of sort of, a time lapse of kind of how our sky moves here. So this will track it throughout the night. So this is the bread and butter of what we use on our tours. This one back here is a star sense. It's a lot smaller and it's called a refractor. So what it means is it's a handheld. You point it and you move it. But what's unique about this one is, and I'll show you guys at the end, but you might see the big thing on the top,
Hmm.
Mhm.
that big black bit there. That's a cell phone holder. So what you
Okay.
basically do is it sits. It's great for kids because it sits in there, and basically you can just look at your telephone, and it will show you what you're seeing through the scope. And then, of course, you can take
Oh, that's
photos.
cool.
Telescopes, they come in all different shapes and sizes. We obviously have a silly amount of them, not out of need, but out of need.
Yeah.
So sick.
No, that's awesome seeing those because I think you always look at telescopes and I remember in astronomy class they always said like they're expensive and they're really cool to use. So seeing those and especially the one that tracks like whatever you say it's already programmed, that's really awesome. And I could see how it's probably helpful for those tours to really show, those people that you have there. Um, but one thing
Exactly.
I saw that I honestly. it could just be I never really think about it, is you guys do tours during the day. So what's the coolest thing about those solar tours that you have? Because I know the only time I would look at the sun is for eclipses. They give us the
Yeah.
glasses, what to look at, but seems like you do solar tours. What's so beneficial about that and what's so awesome about it?
Yeah. It's something we're part of a pretty small demographic in terms of, astrotourism experiences. There's
Mhm.
a couple of other places that do it really, really well in the country as well. But what we sort of realized is that, as you said, people don't think about it, right? The
Hmm.
sun's up there all day, and you're told since you're a kid, don't look at the sun.
Hmm.
And what we have is we have specialized solar telescopes that have built-in filters, and then we also have filters that we can put on the big scopes as well.
Hmm.
And what that allows us to do is look at the surface of the sun. We get to look at sunspots, which are just little cooler regions on the sun, and some of them up to multiple times bigger than Earth, which is always, you're like, what? It's this little dot on the sun.
Yeah.
Um, and it allows you to kind of see that surface, that it's the sun isn't sort of a stationary object. You can see that it's alive, and it's plus it's, as I said, it's a cool thing to do.
Hmm.
But then of course you factor it into all of the ways the sun benefit us, in terms of agriculture, in terms of the nature, the conservation
Hmm.
here, everything else that comes with it. So it's pretty cool to kind of get to do. Not to mention, most people don't realize they can do it. So when you go,
Hmm.
do you want to look at the sun? And they go, what? And you go,
Yeah.
come have a look at the sun. It's always a little, once again, shock therapy.
Yeah. No, that I think that'd be really cool, especially like if you get to see like those sun flares that just go up on the sun.
Mm.
Like I said, those type of experiences, you always look at them in pictures, but I don't think we ever think we could possibly do it. But if you guys are doing that, that's an awesome experience. I think a lot of people probably enjoy or surprise, and it's
Tell you guys
memorable.
how you can do it. Tell you guys how you can do it tomorrow with your kids. You know what you were talking about with eclipses, how you get the eclipse glasses,
Hmm.
and they are actually sold all over the states in mass at the moment. It's where we get ours. You have these little eclipse glasses and use those. People think you only use those during an eclipse. And what that is the film. That filter is what goes on the telescopes. So if you ever actually want to look at the shape of the sun and look at how it looks, just find one of those old eclipse glasses from
Hmm.
the eclipse that was your ways a few years ago,
Yeah.
and look at the sun with your kids, and they'll go, "What? I didn't know you could do that." So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to kind of realize that once again you don't need all this incredibly expensive equipment to look at
Hmm.
it. It's good fun.
That's awesome.
No, that's really cool. Sorry. Coolest thing you've seen through those telescopes.
Sorry,
What
yeah,
would you say?
good point. My personal favorite at night.
Hmm.
I've got double answer to this. My favorite is Saturn, because seeing Saturn's rings is just, it changes your perspective on everything. It's called the crown jewel of the solar system for a reason, and when you look at it with those massive rings and you see the different colors, and every time I look at it, I still have an audible reaction as I'm setting up the telescopes that the guests always go, "Are you okay?" I'm sorry, I just found
Hmm.
Saturn through the scope.
Hmm.
And the coolest thing I think objectively is a part of the sky called the Orion Nebula. You guys might have heard of a constellation called Orion, but there's a little patch in it, in the part of his sword, which is what we call a stellar nursery. It's called a nebula. And what it is a giant cloud of gas that is basically, without going into fusion too much, it's creating stars. So it's compressing gases together
Hmm.
so intensely that is where stars are being born. So we're looking at, when we look up at that nebula through our scopes, we're looking at stars that are incredibly young, and in billions of years potentially are going to have entire solar systems like
Hmm.
ours does. So that always blows my mind. And the
That's
sun is
awesome.
just the solar spots. Yeah, the
Yeah.
solar spots are crazy to see.
That's so sick. It feels like, like you're just looking at different points in time through a telescope too. Like obviously light takes a long time to travel. And I had a science teacher who was probably the most fascinating individual I've teacher I've ever met in my life. But at the same time, what he would say was extremely terrifying. And it was in his favorite topic in science class was definitely going over astronomy. And one of the coolest things I ever learned about was he's like, yeah, if you have something like a telescope that is ultra strong, like something like kind of out of this world type of telescope, you can somebody looking from a very far distance looking back on Earth might still see like dinosaurs here or something like that as far back. That always just kind of blew my mind. And then we saw a
Hmm.
lot of that in like Interstellar with the concept of time going down to the planet with that was solely water, the giant waves coming through. And they go back up and their shipmate had aged a drastic amount, and it's just mind-boggling to think about stuff like that. So yeah, man, outer space is crazy. It's
So with that, it's yes, obviously you're talking about relativity, which like the concept of it is relatively simple. It's basically, the faster you move towards the speed of light, so the closer you get to that, of course, the slower time goes for you. So one thing that I always like to talk to people about here is the closest star to us, which is the closest star to you as well. Other than, of course, our sun, is a star that is called Alpha Centauri, right? And that is about 4.5 light years away. So I'm not sure if you are you guys do you know what a light year is?
Isn't
Don't worry
it?
if you don't.
just buzz.
I want to say 100 years, but I might be totally off.
No, no, no. Like honestly, it's
Uh,
really commonly misunderstood because it's used in Star Wars. And I'm going to give you a
yeah.
30-second thing here, right? So a light year is really simple. Everyone hears it and you think of a time because it's got
Hmm.
year in it. All 1 light year is the amount of distance that light travels in 1 year. So how far light travels from here to here in 1 year, that's a light year, right? What makes it interesting is how fast light is traveling for that year. So, for example, I'm sure you don't, the speed of light is the fastest object
Hmm.
in the universe that we are aware of. I'm a very close second, and then you've got Mbappe just behind me.
Yep.
But the speed of light is number one at the moment. And for context of how fast it is, it's a little bit under. I'll give it in miles. It's a little bit under 186,000 miles a
Wow.
second, right?
That's
186,000 miles a second. That's how far a light year is. This object moving at 186,000 miles a second for about a year or for a
that's
year. That's
crazy.
1 light year. So it's kind of a bit, it's time, it's distance, yada
Hmm.
yada. But it's the closest object to us is 4.5 light years away. So when you're looking at that star, the closest star, which is 4.5 light years, when you're looking at that star, you're looking at light that left that star and has been traveling through space at 186,000 miles a second for about 4.5 years. So if we were up on that star and we were looking down here, the light that we are looking at from home has been traveling up towards that star at 186,000 miles a second for 4.5 years. And you are seeing it as it was when that light left that star, because you can
Crazy.
only see how fast that light allows you to. So
Hmm.
you're exactly right. You're looking back at time. I always joke, people say time travel doesn't exist. You are literally doing it when you're
Yeah.
looking at the stars because you're looking at something that was, potentially hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And there's no way to see it now.
That's crazy.
Freaky. Our sun is eight
Wow.
light minutes,
Well
right?
explained, Brad. Damn.
Uh,
That's
no,
crazy.
I appreciate that explanation, Brad, because like I say, I always heard it in TV shows, movies, never really dug in as deep. And even in astronomy class, I can't remember us really going too deep into like the light year. So putting it in that perspective, like Tim says, blowing my mind right now because that's just crazy. And yeah, we're looking into the past of those planets, and those planets or galaxies, other, solar system or galaxies that have some sort of life form looking at us back thousands of years when the dinosaurs were around. So probably, So
Exactly.
it's insane.
It might answer the question as to why we've been left alone for a while.
Yeah.
Because they go, what's the point in visiting these giant lizards?
Yeah, it could
Who
be.
knows?
Valid. They're not intelligent. That's what they're thinking. No, that's stellar, man. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, yeah, no. You mentioned one thing, Brad, with the satellites. We see it because, like I said, we have SpaceX here. We see all the launches, everything going into space, and you sort of shared it. There's a lot of satellites, and we just don't know how we're gonna get them down. What are you aware of, or because you're more into this like field, like what are the concerns about having so many satellites and still sending up a lot of stuff to our solar system and even to maybe our planet?
Yeah. And it's actually a really important question. Like, of course, this is for much more qualified minds than me, but for someone who's a little bit closer to it, sort of the main issues that you run into are the fact that it creates a number of problems, the main one being space travel, right? We all want to keep going to the moon. We all want to go to Mars. We all like I think every human you talk to loves the idea of
Mhm.
humans going to Mars and all of that. I don't know anyone that goes, no, that's not interesting. So, the main thing is the more and more satellites we create up there, the harder it is to map a trajectory out. That's an obvious one. But also, when we started sending these satellites up in, the 60s, the 50s,
Mhm.
around that time, they were so wondrous. It was so incredible that we could do it. No one ever thought about the after, right? So
Mhm.
we, as I said, have tens of thousands of satellites up there. Thousands of them we can't connect to. They're dead. They're
Mhm.
just orbiting around Earth and they are space junk. So the other issue you face is debris. At
Mhm.
any point, those could get slightly bumped out of orbit, crash down, hit a house, and God forbid what
Mhm.
comes with that. You also have, pollution. For a very long time, the answer was dump it as close as you can to Point Nemo. As we're sort of learning, you can't just dump things in the ocean, and that's not the best way to do things. So the main concern is just sort of if it continues to go, what do you do if you kind of trap ourselves down here and you can't
Mhm.
go up or go out anywhere? So it is a genuine concern. They are definitely thinking about it, but it's certainly not made easier when satellites like Starlink, even though they're much smaller, they're like the size of a laptop pretty much,
Mhm.
big laptop. They're getting sent out at, 40, 50 a time. It
Mhm.
makes things a little complicated, and you also get light pollution. So
Yeah.
there's so many reasons that sort of why you don't just want so much space junk up there. But I don't. I think it'll get solved. We're sort of a
Okay.
bit more conscious with the reusable rockets and all of that type of stuff
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah. And with being a dark sky sanctuary, when you're looking up with the people you're giving the tours to, do you see a lot of those satellites through the telescopes at times?
yeah,
Yeah.
and once again, you'll see heaps of them with your naked eye.
Yeah.
You just need to look just after sunset or just before sunset, and you need to look to the side of the sky that the sun set on. Because if you think when you're seeing a satellite come across the sky, you're not seeing the satellite, you're seeing the sun's light reflected off the satellite. So,
Mm.
what you might get confused about, and you guys might go, oh, I remember that, is quite often you'll see a satellite go across the sky. And sort of when it gets kind of past the halfway point, it starts to really dim. And the amount of times I've gone to be like, oh, there's a satellite, and I've gone to talk to someone, and then I've gone to point at it again, and it's gone. And people think I'm crazy. But what's happened is the satellite is just too far away on the other side of the sky to
Hmm.
reflect the sunlight anymore, so you don't see it. And obviously, people will go out in the middle of the night and be like, "Why can't I see any satellites?" Well, the sun is on the other side of the
Mm.
the Earth. There's nothing to reflect. So
Okay.
just after sunset, and yes, we see a lot of them because our tours are just after sunset. So
Yeah.
my most on a tour night, including pack up, was I think 88,
Wow.
and that was just out in the course of about sort of three and a bit hours, just before and just after sunset.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah.
And you said you brought up one thing with I don't know who wouldn't like space travel. We had a hot take on our channel, Brad, about Anthony Anderson. who didn't know why we were doing the recent mission around the moon and exploring. And he's like, "Oh, that seems like a waste of money." And we called him out on it. We didn't agree. We thought it was well worth it and was a very cool thing to do. So I think that's a great,
Great.
place for any type of tax or government money to go to, or any type of
Yep.
donation-ary, like,
Yep.
program. I think space travel and exploring our outside world is necessary.
And a very common misconception is that, spending that money on space travel means we don't spend it here and we're giving up on looking after the earth. That's what I get all the time, is why are they spending billions of dollars going to spend? It's you've got to understand how government funding works. It's not like they're
Yep.
going to go, we're not going to the moon. Oh, give it to the poor. Like, that's not
Yeah.
quite how it
Yeah.
works, that would be great. And I'm sure we would all agree if there was you can end poverty or we can go to the moon, you'd probably end poverty, but that's not how it works. And people obviously need to understand that us going to space creates a lot more sort of benefits, not just in terms of, wow, this is cool, look at what we can do, in
Mhm.
terms of mining and resources and the economy and new jobs. And it opens up a whole new industry, essentially trillions of dollars worth of an industry. So there are a lot of economical benefits too. And honestly, anyone that just goes, no, why are we doing that? I go, all good, mate. Don't worry about it.
You
Yeah.
got your answer. I love that.
So we talked about it. It goes a little off topic, but it's something I gotta ask you, Brad. You mentioned Christopher Nolan, Interstellar. Is there one space star related movie that you would say is probably the most accurate to what astronomy and what we actually see is?
That's a really good question. Okay, I would say Interstellar. I'm not sure if you guys know about this, but
Yeah.
a really, really, really accredited physicist, Kip Thorne. He's actually won a Nobel Prize for the work he did. He was sort of the advisor on Interstellar.
Okay.
So there are a few things in Interstellar that are a bit movie. The only part of it, there's two parts that jump to my mind that are fake, like fake, and that is the end scene. Without spoiling too much, when he's in
Yeah.
the,
Oh yeah.
when he's in the library, the
The lover.
bookcase.
Yeah.
And then there's the scene where when they are flying on the ice planet, they hit
Hmm.
a cloud. That's not, you can't have like a floating ice cloud, like that doesn't make sense in physics. But other than
Yeah.
that, it's pretty solid.
Okay.
But I would always recommend people to watch Don't Look Up, because as someone
I,
who works in astronomy, it's that's a very accurate representation of society. You would have the entire science community going, guys, there's a big comet coming. You'd
yeah.
go, nah, I don't believe that. Like, my governor's telling me it's a
Yeah.
lie. Like, so that's a funny one for me to
Yeah.
watch.
I've seen that movie and I really do enjoy it because I do feel like it is like that way at times. It's like the government saying, you hear about it from astronomers like, oh, this is happening or, this is passing by. And then the government's like, ah, no, it's nothing, even though it actually is, and it's like in the movie, the biggest spoiler is
It's
like,
funny.
it ends it, it's like this
Yeah,
is the
that's
end.
just it. It's
Yeah,
done.
it's done. And it's just like, well, they were actually true. And it's just the government told us not to look up. It's a good movie. I haven't seen it to Netflix. I think it's still on.
It is. It is. It's a
Yeah,
Netflix original, so it'll be on there
yeah,
for a
yeah.
while. It's a good movie.
Fantastic. I got to venture over. I'm definitely not the movie guru John is, and clearly Brad, you are too. Which is
I love
fantastic.
movies.
No, that's great. We got to get you on for movies now. We're just coming up
Movie.
with new ideas. So, yeah. Have you
Should I
join
just
in on
host?
our box office thing? Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And speaking of movies, television. So I told you a bit about it before in previously, Brad. Just, I wore a wig, and that was after Giorgio Tsoukalis, who is, aliens guy. He, lifts his arms up and he goes, he's big aliens. Loves to talk about it. John wears tinfoil hat. We get really into it and, go kind of, cheesy subject of conspiracies, alien conspiracies, things like that. But a big one for KAIKURA is the 1978 KAIKURA lights, orbs, and we each watched a fabulous documentary on this, and the camera could not stand still. But they were up there in the plane. Looked creepy as hell to have, I guess, three lights following them. They described the orbs that were there, top part transparent, lots of light on the bottom. Looked really badass, and we actually talked about orbs that everybody's going crazy about on the East Coast, maybe about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And, that kind of became a big deal. And I think half of them are honestly drones after a while. But, people just, started looking up and observing what's up there. So I'm curious, is there any subject matter that you dive into as far as the 1978 Kaikoura incident goes? And how much of a believer are you in, like, you talked aliens, extraterrestrial life?
In terms of okay, first things first,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's always real hesitant to talk to me about this because they think I'm going to be like, oh my God, you're such an idiot. Like half of my tour content is this. Like I get
Love
asked these
that.
questions every single tour. And in terms of the Kaikoura lights, no, I don't. I'm actually not too familiar with them. So I'm
Oh,
now going to deep dive this, means I should know this. In terms of conspiracies, like my answer's a bit more disappointing because
mhm.
there's almost always a good explanation. Like from now on, now we're friends. Whenever you guys see something, I want you to send me the article and I will give you the response back and you
Mhm.
guys will be sorted. But there are, in my professional opinion, of course, extraterrestrial life exists. That's not the question. The question for me is A, the question for me is A, if we did see them, like, what can we do about it? For example, remember I told you our closest star, Alpha
Mhm.
Centauri? We could look up there and see aliens, and it would take us thousands of years to get there. So, you know what humans are like. We're not the most patient. We're not exactly going to send them
Yeah.
a, hey, are you guys friendly? And then wait a couple of thousand years and then, like relax from that. So, the biggest issue for me, genuinely, with extraterrestrial life becomes unless they turn up here on our doorstep, which I don't believe they have, right? I'll go on record to say, I do
Okay.
not think we have been visited. I haven't seen anything in my experience, in my sort of diving into what has been released, the classic UFO files,
Yeah.
where I go, this is an extraterrestrial. There's lots of unexplained aircrafts, but there's nothing that I go, this isn't a technology or aircraft or movement that comes from here. That doesn't come from here. Sorry. So it's a little disappointing. I do think they're out there. I just
Yeah.
think it's a case of people underestimate how big space is. Like there's it's a really silly cliche, but cliches I always use are, space is called space for a reason,
Mhm.
and there's a reason why we also say, astronomically large when we're trying to be really dramatic. Like space is incomprehensibly big. So people go, oh, there's stars all over, there's planets all over. Of course, yes, but these are all tens of thousands of years going at the fastest capability a rocket can physically go,
Mhm.
like to get there. So unless they have some, one thing that would change it for me, unless we found something that just broke physics, that changed the laws of physics, which up to now, the laws of physics are absolute. We
Mhm.
haven't seen anything that doesn't fit within those laws of physics. And when we do, which we will, like we'll thousands of years, we'll probably change them. But when we do, that's when we'll go, okay, the laws of physics are different. But until then, we know how things move, we know how things interact. We have a
Mhm.
pretty good understanding. You guys will know when aliens are here. It won't be like a in a courtroom. It'll be like a global announcement. The government, it won't get announced to you by president sat on their desk going.
Yeah.
It'll be, you'll know. You'll know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't hide that. You can't
That
hide UFOs.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah. So all I'm hearing though, Brad, is we can keep doing aliens guy and tease the fact that
one
they
Hundred
could be
percent.
here because
They could get here.
we can just be a big tease, and I love that. And
Yeah.
then, quite frankly, just based off of our conversation, if they ever visit and they happen to come in contact with me and John, God knows, probably would never happen. But if they do, I'd be like, hey, I know a guy in New Zealand. You're going to want to go see him first, and then if they could explore
No,
there
you
first,
wouldn't.
because
I
all
know
of you
exactly what
Kiwis
you'd
are so
say.
friendly. So we'll send them over there
You
first and
would
be like, yeah, we're organized.
you would literally turn around and go, Ronaldo or Messi?
I
They would
might.
just
I probably would. I would see if they probably have seen that.
Yeah, solve the conflict.
They probably are.
That's funny.
They're probably seeing them as kids right now. Like
Yeah,
pre
yeah,
Yep.
Man U, early Barcelona
yeah.
years. So they might not know where we're at the
Can
moment
I
by the time they get here.
can I ask you a question as you put your tinfoil hats on for a
Mhm.
second?
Oh yeah.
What would be so assuming aliens have visited and they
Mhm.
are, by the sounds of it, like assimilated within us, what would the reason be? Like, why would they do that? Not as an individual, like as a species, which is obviously incredibly highly evolved if they're able to do
Mhm.
that. What would their like? Why would they do that as a creature, as a living creature?
I'll go first, John.
Mhm.
I see it as a two-edged sword, and it could go either way. Are they going to be the protagonist or are they going to be the antagonist? And I think protagonist side is that they could emulate a human because we Brad, we've gone really deep into
Yeah.
conspiracies. Like
So
we
am I.
are
I promise you, not
really
as far as
entrenched.
me.
Yeah,
I promise you, not as far as me.
we can't walk any of it back at this point. So, we've brought up the concept of they're already here and
Yeah,
they can mimic what a human looks like. And,
yeah.
we've joked that, it's a certain commissioner of a certain sport. Like, oh, yeah, that guy's ruining the sport. He's definitely an alien. We kind of bring up that thought of like, okay, protagonist wise, though, they come here, they emulate, and they try to help us. They've maybe been in our footsteps once upon a time in their planet. They've learned through experience. They're here to help solve our problems. You name it. If you want to name global warming a conspiracy, whatever. They could help us kind of work through that international conflict, things like that. Antagonist side is they're here and they just absolutely want to rule us, take over the world, and we don't have, we talk about our oceans,
Mhm.
how much unexplored ocean we have, and a big conspiracy. Again, we've gone over a lot. We think that there could be a possibility that they live in our oceans. There's been some footage that we've seen, and happens to be off the coast of California, where we see something diving in. Probably AI. I don't know. Again, we'll tease it. But are they living in our oceans? Are they going back and forth between there? Could they already be here in that aspect? And they're just building. They found Atlantis and they are just modernizing it, and they're getting ready to just like lift that bad boy out of the water and take us over. I don't know. And then we have a whole bunch of movies that could go over that too. But that's kind of how I personally
Address
see
your
it.
points because I love that. I'm in this now.
There it
So
is.
my question to that would be both of these. Sorry to interrupt your point, John,
No.
but it would be, I would say, so okay, to address both your points of the antagonist and protagonist, right? As
Mm-hmm.
someone who doesn't believe that's happening, right? So just the other side of the argument, I would say
Mm-hmm.
my question would once again be why. So I would say if they have the capability to be among us, assimilate, have the technology to be indetectable, they don't need to assimilate to learn us to conquer us, right? So that's ants and people. They would pour
Mm-hmm.
boiling water over us, over the anthill. That would be job done. So that would be my question as to why they would go to that extent, because they can obviously observe us from afar in that case. So
Mhm.
why would they be gaining knowledge on the ground that they couldn't get elsewhere? If they were the protagonist, I would say, once again, why? What species has ever shown ever that they will just help anyone else, right? Empathy, and this is going a huge way. And just without criticizing, this is taking a huge leap, assuming that this species that potentially, well, doesn't abide by the same laws of physics, now wants to randomly be empathetic, and no other species other than humans show a really sophisticated level of empathy to the degree that they would go and help that species for the betterment, right? So I would say, why would they travel across the universe potentially, jump in just to give us Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and help us develop political systems? Because I've gone full deep into the
It's fantastic.
the missing civilization jumps and all of these things, right? So my field and what I study personally is archaeoastronomy. So that's basically the relationship between ancient civilizations and the stars. So I always forget his name. The guy who has you guys have definitely seen it. He's got the YouTube, the Netflix documentary. Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock. You ever heard of Graham Hancock?
No, I actually haven't.
Oh, I have
Shame on me.
You guys down a conspiracy rabbit hole. He is one of the most qualified of this, right? And he goes into the connection between, the pyramids and the stars. And he basically has this theory that there's a lost civilization, which is very obvious, which answers this question of sort of how did we go from here to here in terms of humanity. And a lot of people go to we got a helping hand, and what is more likely is that there is a missing piece of history. There is a missing part, or we had our original dates of history wrong. So look up Graham Hancock. He was ridiculed, 5-10 years ago, like laughed out of the building. And now he's pretty universally accepted that we sort of got the dates wrong of when we first came into civilization. So definitely interesting to read. But yeah, as I said, I'm all about the conspiracies, but I always like to pull it back to a why. If you can't tell me, like, I'm not saying you guys can't, but I say, if you can't tell me why they would do that way, not just why they would do it as a whole, like why they would do it that way, I go, I'm not about the like living among us thing. Because you go like, look at humans, like why would we, for example, say we were going in to take over an entire herd of cows to harvest them and eat them, right? We wouldn't dress up as a cow and go and live among the cows for 10 years. Like we would trick them and do whatever we needed to do and be done with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Super valid. And you brought up incredibly intelligent questions in rebuttal there, Brad. I'm going to give you one really immature answer to those. And what comes to mind is they are just really bored. They've been there, done that.
Good answer.
And they're like,
good answer.
You know
like
what?
ants in a sandbox.
Exactly. They're like, you know what? With that civilization, we're total dickheads to them. So this time around, we're going to do the other end of the spectrum, and we're just going to be kind of nice and just try to help them figure it out a bit. And if they're too much of idiots there, then we just turn into the antagonist again. We're like, we tried. You guys are done. And
so that's a perfect answer. So one thing I want you guys to do, and this is the one thing I'm asking for, is when you guys are having your space discussions, I want one of you to always be playing devil's advocate. Because what ends up happening, and you guys are not these people, because you're, and I'm not just blowing smoke out you here, but you guys are very good people, and you're intelligent people. And what ends up happening is you get conspiracy people that get together, and when they discuss, they both just feed off each other and you're just, before you know it, you're talking about Donald Trump's an alien and everything's, and so sure. What I want you guys to do is when you talk, one of you play the why, because what you just did was perfect. You answered those questions perfectly, and if your answer is, I think they're bored and they're doing this because we're interesting to them and they want, like, that's an answer. That's not an answer I can turn around to and go, that's stupid. Like, that's an answer. But if you don't have those, the end point, you just kind of go, oh, they're just doing this crazy stuff. The one I always go with is flat Earth, right? Like, and if you guys are flat earthers, we need to have another podcast changing that. But
we can be.
Obviously,
we can be.
If you want us to be, we will be.
We can do
just for the fun of it.
We deal with a lot of flat earthers, right? And a question that I always break it down to, other than all of the scientific confirmed answers, is why would every single person involved in this industry be lying to you? That means that I'm sat here on the phone to you guys lying to you right now. Like no one's paying me enough to do that. Do I look like I live in a house that's funded by NASA? You know, it's you. So when you get down those roads, every so often you've just got to pull it back and go, okay, but why? Like if this was happening, which let's assume it is, why? What's the outcome of it?
Mhm.
You know, and if you can't come up with a good answer, then I think that's where the conversation ends in most debates I have. But you guys seem like you got it all answered.
Yeah, clearly it's because they've never reached the waterfall yet. So once they do that,
They haven't climbed over the ice wall.
We can do it, Brad. We could, tinfoil hats, crazy wig. We
together, the three of us.
Easily. Yes. And it sounds like we need to get Graham on here. We'll try to get in touch with his people. We'll have a quad chat with him and go over some of those conspiracies as well.
100%. I'm always here for conspiracy. We could even make a running conspiracy theories show. I would have to tune in regularly for a space conspiracy.
Don't tease us with a good time there. Yeah. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. You rebutted a lot of my stuff. I will say Tim's a lot more the conspiracy theorist. He sends me a lot of the videos. I watch into it. I will say, like, I'm a big movie guy, like I've mentioned, and I truly think these movies sometimes is a little window to some of these conspiracies and actually what alien life could be. And I think the one thing I've always thought about alien life, why they're here, is they're testing us. I've always felt like it's a test. You know, they're looking at us. They have been traveling and they have the means to travel, but they probably feel like we haven't reached a point that we are capable of managing that type of light year travel. And you guys sort of answered it, like, but why, and Tim sort of mentioned them. They're just bored. They're still playing with us. Who knows? So I go a lot of based off movies and then what Tim sends me because he gets a lot more of those videos that he sends me, and then I start looking into it, and then it makes me think.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, one of the biggest issues with it is, and once again, all of the conversations and all of the opinions come based off that everything applies to the laws of physics, right? Mm-hmm. So nothing can move as far, once again, I always prefix, as far as we know, nothing is capable of moving faster or close to the speed of light if it has any mass. So, we go, well, there aren't things that are visiting us at light speed because for that to happen, they wouldn't be able to physically exist. Mm-hmm. And once again, if that ended up happening, we would go, okay, I guess what we knew about mass related to light travel is incorrect. But obviously, until we can see that, we do have to obviously go based off sort of what we know. So, there's the answer of, if I wanted to put a tinfoil hat on, what to me is a lot more plausible is that they are not traveling at light speed. Yeah. But I can at the moment say to you, an alien hasn't traveled at light speed to visit us because it's not possible. Mm-hmm. You can go, oh, well, it is possible. We just don't know it yet. And then we just get into a back and, so having that,
Yeah, you just gave me a ton of ammo to be a massive pain in the ass for somebody. So fantastic.
You're welcome.
Because eventually, that chat would probably go to the Death Star and using the Force. It's only logical. Before I started, I just showed John my really cool lightsaber I got from Disneyland. So clear geek for it. So sick. Love that.
This was on my birthday cake from my partner last year. She made me the scene where Anakin fights Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. That was the scene.
That's
Love
awesome.
That. Love that. Yeah.
But
I need one of those. Where did you get those?
Disneyland, in Star Wars land. They had it with the milk, and they were like $20 extra. Would you like a lightsaber? I'm like, yes, easy.
Right. Take my firstborn child.
I need to mail you one. I'll go there, and I'll get one specifically for you, Brad. But great stuff, and it's a great topic to kind of run with, and it's a ton of fun. It's kind of eye-opening, but most of all, it gets people kind of talking about conspiracies, space in general, how it could be possible, having one logical side of an argument to, kind of lack of a better word, brain dead one.
Hmm.
It's a fun and entertaining way to kind of talk more about it and bring more attention to
Yeah.
it. So I think that's really cool. And then second point to that, I think you should make that a movie script. That sounds like a really cool movie concept. They crashed here in the early 1900s. Now they have to kind of just blend in and
Paul, isn't it? Isn't that Paul? You know the
A little,
comedy with
a little bit of
the,
Paul, Simon Pegg.
maybe we'll just name it
yeah, it's
Brad.
a great
We'll
movie
just name it
too, by the way.
Brad.
Yeah, I kind of look like a grey alien anyway.
Super
But
sick,
you're
but a
right.
great
It
movie
does
too.
get people talking, and that's one thing that
Hmm.
a lot of people in my field just dismiss, this type of conversation,
Hmm.
and I don't because if, a lot of people wouldn't talk about space if they weren't
Yeah,
talking about that, and a lot of people start on that and then learn a few, and then
yeah.
10 years later they're lecturing at at a university about physics because it's piqued their interest. So
Yeah.
I'll always talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's important because like what you did right now, you shared a lot of information, like Graham Hancock. It's someone we're gonna start looking into, and now gets us deeper into space, aliens, these conspiracies, and really looking into the sky more than if we were just talking about it in the professional, someone that is in this field would be like, ah, no, I'm not going to talk to you about it. It's like it keeps us going and it keeps that conversation. And like I say, if you give us info, a lot of us people will look into it because we're curious. It's like, and no, our theory's right. Let me read it. And then once you read it, you're like, oh, actually, no, it makes sense. So, we always appreciate any type of feedback, stuff like that. But,
I think exactly what you just said is really important because I think a lot of what's missing in astronomy is that science communication, right?
mhm,
Us as people, we like comfort in knowledge. And
mhm,
this isn't, by the way, this is going to sound really condescending. It isn't. But what a lot of conspiracy comes from is lack of information, right?
mhm,
A lot of people think, X, Y, or Z is lying to them because they just haven't told them the truth.
mhm,
And what I think is really important is, people that come to me going, we haven't landed on the moon. I go, why? As opposed to ridiculing them. Because
mhm.
don't get me wrong, there are some that are so far gone with their beliefs, and that's completely fine. As
Yeah.
long as they are respectful, they can articulate the belief. I have no issue with that. But a lot of the people end up kind of going, I didn't know that.
Mhm.
And when someone says we haven't been to the moon, I go, like we have lasers that reflect off sensors off the moon. It's how we know, like down to the mile, how far away the moon is, and you can go and look at that. And 70% of people will go, I didn't know that. And then they know we've been to the moon.
Right? I didn't know
30%,
that.
yeah, exactly. And
Same.
30% then go, well, that sensor's fake. And then I go,
Huh.
okay, like there's only, I can
Mhm.
provide you with the information.
Yeah.
Whether or not you choose to believe in
Yeah.
the scientific method is your choice. And an argument I always use is you can't pick and choose science. So someone that is a denier of, the globe, right? They're a flat earther, and the Earth, other than the fact that we've now taken pictures of it, we know it's round based off the scientific method, right? I would say to those people, do you use your phone? And they'll go, well,
Hmm.
yeah, of course. And I go, do you understand exactly how your phone operates? And they'll go, well, no. And you go, yeah, but you understand that there's a microchip in there, and
Hmm.
but you don't understand exactly how the components connect together to create signal to send a text to, but you
Right.
trust it, right? You don't go, my phone is trying to kill me, or some people
Yeah.
go all off the deep end. That's the scientific method.
Hmm.
If you're sick and you take Panadol, you take paracetamol,
Mhm.
that's the scientific method. I know that's going to get rid of my headache. You can't
Hmm.
take, you can't give this is a different topic, but you can't give your kid a flu shot and use your phone to call the doctor, but then, be like, oh, the astronomers are lying to us. You go, no, we're
Hmm.
all following the same scientific method, which
Hmm.
we are a lot more critical of ourselves than you are of us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's been for something to be put out by the scientific community, it's been incredibly scrutinized, and you've had incredible minds that have played devil's advocate and tried to prove it wrong, and it's passed the tests.
Yeah.
So there's some things that you just go, science is right. Like I'm being
Yeah.
told this, it's right,
Yeah.
and you might be wrong, and people might be lying to you, but 9 times out of 10, they're not. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
I would absolutely love the opportunity to be on that panel of scrutinizing one of their ideas and just come up with just the most idiotic rebuttals to
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
let's test that theory, see how far we
Hey,
can get
so
ourselves.
let me tell you.
So you're saying a laser will go that far? Psych,
I
you
can
know?
jump how high? Like,
Yeah. Just come up with just absolute ridiculousness.
but
And
that's
and
pretty
I
much
think
what science is.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because it's discovering, just a bunch of new things, stuff that, and you brought it up. It's hard for some people to kind of accept, new information coming into their minds, especially if they learned it a certain way. Um, so, only you can grasp that through, conversation, understanding a little bit more.
Mhm.
So, and that's the best part of it. So, yeah, I don't know which other we went on a big tangent there, Brad. I
Yeah.
love that. I think
Sorry,
that was
I'm
It's what
bad
we
for
do a
that.
lot. It's what we do a
yes,
lot.
Yeah.
generational yappers is what we've been called.
Yeah.
So, and now
Uh,
you've joined us.
I think two last questions, Brad. Sort of for the people watching. Like I said, tourism in many parts of the world could be seasonal. How do you keep up with that business year round? Because I've read a little bit of when to visit New Zealand, when not to because of the weather. Is it more just locals being there? How do you keep up Moana skies?
Yeah, so it's more education really.
Hmm.
It's kind of this is our second winter. And this obviously the growth that is shown kind of shows that the information is working, kind of letting people know that the best time to actually view the sky is winter here in New Zealand.
Hmm.
For example, the main attraction here in Kaikoura is the whales. We do the whale watching here. The best time to look at the whales is winter. So it's sort of understanding that people want to go on holiday, they want to visit in summer, and while that's great for the weather, it's not necessarily the best for the experiences. So there's lots of other things that change in winter.
Hmm.
It's a completely different sky. But we're getting to the stage where our summer is of course a natural boost, but we're wanting to of course help do what's already being done and help continuing grow New Zealand, and
Hmm.
more specifically Kaikoura as an all year winter destination as well. The snow-capped mountains
Hmm.
and the stargazing with hot chocolates, and it's a
Hmm.
wonderful place in winter. So just a little bit more knowledge that we're not like, might be a bad example, but we're not like the beaches of Miami where it's like you
Yeah.
got to come in summer when it's hot, and you just come when you come, and you just have slightly different experiences. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think for us here in the States right now, it's, mid 90s every day. We're in the middle of summer. So anybody who kind of feels like they want to escape the heat that they're currently in, perfect opportunity
Hmm.
to, head over towards New Zealand and Kaikoura
Yeah.
specifically and kind of experience that, especially as you speak to it, best time of year to, honestly
Hmm.
stargaze. So, and it's something where, we're honestly more than sold on, trying to make our way over to New Zealand, visit Moana skies, Kaikoura altogether, obviously visit all the major cities within New Zealand itself. But, as my final question, why should experiencing Kaikoura, the dark sky sanctuary, be on the bucket list of, a New Zealand visit altogether?
well, good question. So I think, and I'm obviously biased, I think it's the one place that you can come, bar a few other places in the world that aren't as accessible. Right. So I would say the places that are accessible that are better viewing would be the Keck Observatory in Hawaii. But how accessible is that?
Hmm.
And then you have the Atacama in Chile. And there are places that have incredible stars like Colorado, like Arizona, like da 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 da. But New Zealand is one of the few places you can come in the world where you can come and experience literally one of one of one skies, and then also get to experience everything else. You can
Hmm.
go on whale watching, you can go and sit on a beach, you can go stargazing, you can drive 2 hours down the road and be in a city. It's very unique in terms of being a quite nice closed little ecosystem
Hmm.
of experiences that you can do. So while I would say stargaze, I would also say do everything else while you're here. Come here for stargazing, but do the whale watching, go learn about our seals, go
Hmm.
learn about the shearwater huttons, go do everything else that is to offer here in New Zealand, because astrotourism is the largest growing tourism industry in the world, and it's only going to increase here in New Zealand. We are the center for it, essentially, of the world, astrotourism, and it's going to hopefully continue along that vein.
That's incredible. Again, I'm gonna repeat what I said earlier. Just Brad for mayor at this point of Kaikoura is absolutely fantastic. And we planned on 45 minutes to an hour. If it's not enough of a sell for absolutely everybody listening to this, that to go visit Moana
Hmm.
Skies with Brad, it can easily turn into double the time that you were planning on, just because of how much information
Yeah.
what a great person you are, and how much you know on these topics, and really are willing to divulge anything. So I think it's absolutely phenomenal, and I feel like I've learned like 10 new things,
Yeah.
like right off the bat.
Yeah.
Can I do one more question? I just want to
Hmm.
do like,
Please.
and you can obviously ask it if you want and edit it or however,
No, yeah,
but I
yeah.
just want to do something about sort of how, if the everyday person wants to start stargazing and getting into
Hmm.
astronomy, like how they can do that realistically without
Yeah.
Fantastic.
spending thousands and thousands of dollars.
But yeah, I think that's
Fantastic
a
way.
great thing to share.
Yeah, so obviously for those people who, are interested in looking at the night sky, have sort of done it a few times from their garden, and maybe want to expand on their knowledge a little bit without spending thousands of dollars on a telescope or going and getting a physics degree. Firstly, I would be, inclined to tell them to look at their local areas. Most places have an astronomical society sort of within a couple of hours. Reach out to them. 9 times out of 10, they are very passionate and helpful people that will sort of help you get engaged. But if you want the basic tips, the first thing is don't even look at a telescope, right? What you need is a decent pair of binoculars. That would be the first thing. So, $100, $200 on a decent pair of
Mhm.
binoculars and an app. There's multiple, but the one that I would recommend would be Stellarium. So I'll send you the link to this if you guys wanted to link it in
Mhm.
there, but it's free.
Please.
It's called Stellarium, and basically what it does is you point your phone up at the night sky, you press, view now, and it syncs to wherever you are in the world, and it tells you what the night sky is. What you're looking at, you can click on the objects. It has a voice, so it's accessible if you want it. And it will give you all the information of what you're looking at. You can change the settings to your local culture. So it will
Mhm.
show you cultural constellations,
Okay,
and
that's
you can
cool.
fast forward time, reverse time. So Stellarium and a pair of binoculars is the way to start. I wouldn't even recommend looking at a telescope until you've been doing that for sort of a year or two. And then after that, you can start looking at how you're going to mortgage 7 of your homes to buy a telescope. But
Yeah.
until then, you can keep it nice and simple. But it's
Yeah.
very accessible. But once again, just reaching out to your local astronomical society, doing a bit of research,
Mhm.
getting an app and looking up. But one tip I would give you is giving yourself time. A really common thing is people will step outside, they'll sit in their garden for 5, 10 minutes, they'll get cold, they'll go inside. It takes about 22 to 23 minutes of no white light pollution
Mhm.
for your eyes to fully adjust to the dark. So when you go outside, don't even look up, look at each other and yap and have a hot chocolate for 20 minutes without
Mhm.
your phone before you even start looking up and stargazing. So,
Okay.
if you're using your phone and the apps, use a red light filter. Red light doesn't affect your eyes like white light does. So lots of little tips and tricks. But my biggest thing would just be don't be daunted by it. Start
Yeah.
somewhere. You think, sounds silly, but Stephen Hawking started somewhere. The best open heart surgeon in the world started messing up someone's injections at one
Yeah.
point. It's you got to start somewhere, right? So jump in and just start learning as much as you can.
Love
No, that
that.
we appreciate that, Brad. Because I think about a trip I did. It was like probably like 6 years ago to Joshua Tree. And that's I think like I looked into it a little bit. It might be like a like a dark, sky
I think it's a
place.
reserve.
Yeah. So, but I know because we rented an Airbnb, had like a pool and stuff, but we sat outside at night for about like 2 hours just talking with the fire pit and then just looking up at the sky. And you're totally right, because I looked at it. I remember looking up at the sky first. You can still see stars, but after a while of talking, and then when you look up into it later, it's just a lot more clearer. You see a lot more, and it's like your eyes are just getting adjusted. So, that's great advice that I think a lot of people probably don't think about. Your eyes need to adjust a bit, especially after all this artificial light that we're always living in the home.
Exactly. I'm guilty for it too.
No,
Yeah.
that's well put. And sorry, this is exactly where my brain goes. I just went on once I get out to the desert, I hit up a 76 gas station, look up at the sky, and then that's where, my comparison to Joshua Tree is. It's just that gas station off of the 10th freeway.
It is a dark sky park, by the way. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Oh, see
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's
Joshua
got
Tree is
one
a
of the.
beautiful place.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But my one thing would just be once again, and reach out to these dark sky areas. They're always underfunded,
Hmm.
understaffed, and as you
Mm.
said, people like yourself, I'm sure you guys have one down the road that you didn't know existed. And after this
Hmm.
conversation, you're gonna go and be like, what? You guys do all
Yeah.
this stuff? And I would, if you want to get involved, get involved. They want volunteers, they want
Hmm.
people to learn how to use the telescopes, they want kids involved.
Hmm.
Honestly, there is no more of a welcoming community than sort of the astronomy and stargazing, because we all get just as excited about it. So as soon as someone else is like, oh, how do I do this? We go, let me tell you, let me tell you. Like, so
Uh,
it's definitely worth just looking it up.
no, that's awesome. We have a buddy, Richard.
Mm.
He's big into astronomy. Anytime there's like comets, meteor showers, he lets us know. I know we have one. I think it's like an hour and a half away from us. Uh, and it's towards like the Santa Clarita area, Tim. But it's one
Oh,
of those mountains, and I know he would go at times. He's like, "Yeah, I want to go to this place because it's dark on top of a hill." Um, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." I never had the chance when we were younger, but it's something like I say with my kiddo now. I'm gonna start looking into it because I think he will enjoy it, and same with Tim. I think with his kiddo, they will enjoy it more, learning how to use a telescope and learning about the stars.
Mhm.
yeah. There's no doubt. We
So,
have
so,
Angeles
oh,
National
sorry.
Forest, which is pretty close too.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I was
again,
just
this is
looking
one
at
of
the
those
closest
things.
to you guys.
Crazy. Yeah, let us know what you got, Brad.
So you've got the nearest California. Obviously nearest. You've got Dark Valley National Park.
Hmm.
You've got Anza Borrego Desert State Park. You've got Great Basin National Park. That's in Nevada. What am I talking about? And then you've got
Close
there's
enough.
Observatory Park in Montville, Ohio,
Mm, might be a little far.
northwest of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So like I said, there's always
You're
places.
everywhere.
Hmm.
Some of them are a little drive, but always, once again, you can go on Dark Sky International and
Yeah.
it's got all the locations, and then it has Dark Sky International locations, and then it will have all the, activities you can do there. I would always recommend take your kids for a weekend. It's one thing
Hmm.
I always guilt parents into doing is I just go, if you are not taking your kid away to experience a proper dark sky at least once, you are
Hmm.
taking something away from them, because there'll be 20, like some of our guests, which is, I don't take anything away from them, but they're 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, and they've never seen a star. And
Hmm.
I just go,
Wow.
you've been robbed of 30 years of this, and now you're just getting into it, and that's great. But, I'm just so sad that your parents, even though they took you camping and stuff, they took you just outside the city,
Hmm.
spend the extra $50, $100 and the extra hour driving just a bit further to go to one of these locations. It's
Hmm.
it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah,
That's
and
fantastic.
it looks like we have a few within like 2 to 3 hours of where we're at.
Yeah.
So, like I say, Joshua Tree is one I know that when I looked it up, they're like, yeah, Joshua Tree, and that's a great place. Like I say, if you get an Airbnb that has a fire pit, just sitting out there in the dark for a bit,
Yeah.
The one thing we didn't have was binoculars. Like I could only imagine with the
Hmm.
binocular, it could have been even more, just
Hmm.
memorable than what it already was. So,
It's incredible.
Yeah,
no.
we each have a set of golf clubs, John, now, so we can go golfing in Palm Springs and then head out
Yeah.
to Joshua Tree and stargaze.
Yeah.
That sounds like a phenomenal.
It does.
We'll tap
That
Brad
also
in.
sounds like an invite. That sounds
Yeah,
like an
it
invite.
absolutely
If I ever
does.
go on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
babe, I'm going to America. I'm going golfing.
Yeah.
Man, I swear that's exactly what we do if you did, Brad, because that's
Yeah.
incredible. And again, the
Yeah.
desert, I feel like it has so much, non-light pollution. Hot as heck during the summer, but well worth it during the night, and
Mm.
how crystal clear it all is. So
Mm.
again, it just you unlocked a part of at least my brain. I'm sure John's
Mhm.
too, with just what this is as far as light pollution and being more informed on it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, also, guys, and
Yeah.
I'll definitely fire through. I'll definitely fire through some resources, and
Yeah.
genuinely, obviously, the same goes to your viewers. Don't be afraid to just reach out and ask me questions. A lot of people
Yeah.
feel like, oh, he's busy, and yes, I am, but I always have time aside for
Yeah.
messages on social media about what this
Yeah.
was and what that was. And main takeaway would just don't be afraid to ask people these questions, because how else are you going to learn it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to just reach out and ask. But you guys
Yeah.
have been great as always. So thanks for
Well,
having me.
no, we
No, likewise.
appreciate it, Brad. We'll put all your info in our description and also in the video here. This is where you can find Brad on Instagram. Um, to ask those questions anytime you see something here, or wherever you're at, California, Florida, and you look up at the skies and see something, reach out to Brad. He'll let you know because he's probably seeing it some way as well. So. Thank you, Brad, again for joining us. I know we took a little bit more time, but like I said, we're generational yappers. We appreciate you teaching us a lot, because I will truly say I did learn a lot of knowledge that I will be using in my everyday life. So, we thank you for that.
Yes, I second that. I'm going to seem like an absolute genius for the rest of the week, and I greatly appreciate that. It's phenomenal. And second to that, I'm going to be sending you probably a bajillion different sky photos. You're going to be like, Tim, that's nothing. Stop being an idiot. No, but it's you are a wealth of knowledge, Brad. An incredible person, and this is the second of many more visits we got to have you on, because it's unlocked many different avenues
Yeah.
with what all we could talk about. So thank you so much
100%.
for
I
your
love
time.
chatting to you
Yeah.
guys.
Awesome.
We'll chat soon. I'm gonna go have a big burger for dinner, I think. Go
Good for
find some
you.
aliens.
Love that.
See you later, guys.
See
Chat
you
soon.
later,
Take care,
Brad.
Brad.
Thank you.
Bye bye.